The weirdest part wasn't the missing papers. It was the timing, because according to royal insiders and Spanish commentators this week, documents connected to internal palace strategy meetings were allegedly destroyed or removed just days before another wave of speculation surrounding Queen Letizia exploded online. Now obviously, and this is important, nobody has publicly proven some giant conspiracy. But here's what caught my attention. The palace didn't react with outrage. They reacted with distance, cold distance. And if you've followed royal families long enough, you know that's usually when things get interesting. Because institutions panic loudly when a story is ridiculous. But when a story hits too close to sensitive territory, that's when silence becomes strategic. And honestly, the deeper I looked into this situation, the more I realized this may not even be about documents at all. It may be about power. Modern power, image power, narrative power, and maybe even something bigger. A quiet battle over what the Spanish monarchy is supposed to become in 2026. Now let me say this upfront because nuance matters. I do not think we're talking about some movie-style villain plot. That's lazy storytelling. What I think we're watching is far more believable, and honestly more fascinating. A monarchy divided between old traditions and a newer media-driven strategy that Queen Letizia reportedly helped shape over the years. And whether people love her or hate her, one thing is undeniable. She changed the tone of the Spanish royal image completely. That's not even controversial anymore. Now before we go deeper into this, if you're new to Leonor's story, subscribe, I post every day. Because honestly, this entire royal situation feels less like a fairy tale lately. And more like a high-pressure corporate rebrand happening in real time. Now here's the detail nobody can stop talking about. The alleged shredded documents were reportedly connected to communication planning, internal optics, and long-term positioning around the monarchy's public image. Again, allegedly, but even the rumor itself tells us something important. People increasingly believe the palace is carefully engineering perception behind the scenes. And honestly, they're probably right, because every monarchy does, every government does, every celebrity machine does, every major institution does. The real question isn't, is image management happening? Of course it is. The real question is, how far does it go? And that's where Letizia becomes such a polarizing figure. Because depending on who you ask, she's either the woman who modernized the monarchy, or the woman who made it feel too calculated. And personally, I think both sides may be partially right. That's what makes this interesting. Now let's talk about why Letizia specifically creates such strong reactions online. She's not viewed the same way as older royal figures. Not even close. There's a sharpness to her public image that audiences immediately pick up on. Controlled posture, controlled expressions, controlled messaging. And while Prince William and Kate Middleton in Britain often lean into warmth and approachability, Letizia's public energy feels different. More disciplined, more media-aware, almost like someone who understands exactly how cameras manipulate perception because she worked inside media before entering royalty. And honestly, that experience may have changed everything. Because unlike royals born inside the institution, Letizia entered it already understanding how narratives are built. That's powerful, potentially very powerful. Now here's my hot take. I don't think the alleged plot against the crown is about destroying the monarchy. I think it's about reshaping it. Huge difference. And if that sounds dramatic, think about what modern monarchies actually are now. They're brands, emotional national brands. That's why optics matter so much. That's why appearances matter so much. That's why tiny moments become global headlines. And honestly, I think Letizia understood earlier than most people inside the palace that surviving the internet era would require changing the monarchy's image completely. The problem: transformation creates enemies. Always. Especially inside old institutions. Now one thing I noticed recently is how online audiences react differently to Leonor compared to previous generations of royals. People analyze her psychologically, not ceremonially. That's new. And I think Letizia may have played a major role in that shift. Look at the focus around Leonor now: discipline, military training, composure, modernity. That's not accidental branding. That's strategy. And honestly, it's smart strategy. If Mr. Beast were running palace PR in 2026, he'd probably say exactly the same thing: show action, not symbolism. That's basically what Leonor's public image has become. Action-oriented, prepared, focused. The future queen is capability rather than fantasy. And maybe that's why some traditional royal observers feel uncomfortable. Because the monarchy suddenly feels less mystical and more corporate. Now here's where the shredded document rumor becomes psychologically fascinating. Because whether the papers existed or not almost becomes secondary. The public already believes there are hidden internal battles happening. That belief alone changes perception. And institutions hate losing control of perception. Especially monarchies. Now personally, I think the palace's biggest fear isn't scandal. It's fragmentation. Because once the public starts imagining different factions inside a royal family, every public appearance becomes loaded with hidden meaning. A glance becomes tension, silence becomes evidence, distance becomes theory, and social media absolutely amplifies this. That's why these stories spread so fast now. People no longer consume royal news passively. They participate in decoding it. That changes everything. Now let's talk about Letizia herself for a second because I think people oversimplify her constantly. Online narratives usually split women in power into two extremes, hero or manipulator. Nothing in between, but reality is almost never that clean. And honestly, I think Letizia became an easy projection target because she represents change inside a deeply traditional institution. That automatically creates resistance, especially in royal culture. And this is where comparisons to someone like Princess Diana become complicated but unavoidable. Not because they're the same personality. They're clearly not. But because both women disrupted royal expectations in completely different ways. Diana disrupted through emotional vulnerability. Letizia disrupted through precision and modernization. Different methods, same institutional discomfort, and I think that's why discussions around her always feel emotionally charged online. Now one moment from this week genuinely stuck with me. During a recent appearance, cameras caught a very brief interaction between Letizia and Leonor that people immediately started analyzing frame by frame online. Some called it supportive, some called it tense, some called it rehearsed, and honestly, that reaction says more about internet culture than the royals themselves. We now live in a world where audiences search for authenticity obsessively. Especially younger viewers. That's why polished perfection actually backfires sometimes. It feels too controlled, and ironically, I think that's the trap modern monarchies keep falling into. The harder they try managing every detail, the more audiences suspect something underneath the surface. Now here's the part nobody talks about enough. Even if these alleged shredded documents contained nothing explosive, the rumor itself reveals a deeper truth. People increasingly believe royal institutions manipulate narratives aggressively behind closed doors. That trust gap is the real story. Not the papers, not the shredders, the trust gap. And honestly, I don't think Spain is alone here. You see similar dynamics around almost every major institution now. Governments, celebrities, corporations, even influencers. Audiences in 2026 assume image management exists everywhere. The mystery is no longer, are they controlling perception? The mystery is, what are they trying so hard to protect? And when institutions refuse transparency, speculation grows automatically. Now let me be clear about something important. There is no verified public evidence proving some secret plot against the crown exists. And I think responsible commentary matters here. But I also think ignoring public suspicion entirely misses the bigger cultural shift happening. People are no longer emotionally attached to institutions automatically. Trust has to be earned continuously now. Especially online. And honestly, that may be the hardest lesson monarchies are still struggling to accept. Because the internet doesn't respect hierarchy naturally. It challenges everything. Now one final thought before we end this. If these rumors keep growing, the palace faces a dangerous modern dilemma. Respond too aggressively. You validate the story. Stay silent. People assume there's truth underneath it. That's the trap. And personally, I think Queen Letizia understands this media battlefield far better than many people inside the institution around her. Maybe that's why she's viewed as powerful. Maybe that's why she's viewed as threatening by critics. Or maybe, and this is my honest opinion, she simply understands something traditional royal systems still resist admitting. In 2026, perception moves faster than control ever can. And once the public starts believing there's a hidden story behind the image alone is never enough anymore.